Hey, beautiful soul. I feel like this conversation is one of the most important that I could ever drop for any person that wants to optimize their health, to reduce the severity and intensity of any dis-ease in their mind body system. And it is the light conversation. And to have it, I'm going to be putting on my blue blocking glasses and you'll understand why as this conversation goes on. So, we've all evolved as humans, yeah? Over the course of a couple of 100,000 years, here we are in this human form. And the planet has been evolving for about 4 billion years. So there's a lot of history in terms of evolution and adaptation and what our body has decided is the most important things for its survival, because that's what our mind body system cares about the most is survival. So it will adapt to changes, but it has a lot of preferences that it likes to follow. And so one of those preferences is the cues of light and dark. And have a think about it. Earth, over 4 billion years, has had the cycles of the sun and the moon to rely on the whole time. There's lots of other things that have fluctuated, but the light and dark cycles have been the same the whole time. And that's very important to land. And so that means that all parts of life are used to the signals of dawn and solar noon, dusk, and then night in this regular rhythm that changes seasonally, depends on the latitude that we're at, all of those things. But each, from a single celled organism all the way up to a complex organism, knows that that's part of what is happening for their bodies. And so each body has adapted to work with those cues of light, depending on who they are and how they live. We're diurnal creatures, which means that we're awake during the day and we sleep at night. And I know that you know this, but there's a whole lot of different things happening when you're up compared to when you're asleep, yeah? Like you're a completely different person at 7 a.m. than you are at 10 p.m. Yep, would you agree? And so your body has a whole lot of its own internal adaptations, internal biorhythms that it has set up to ensure your best optimal survival. So, we have melatonin, which is the hormone of darkness. Everyone thinks it's related to the hormone of sleep, but nocturnal animals also get a big boost of melatonin at nighttime. Melatonin helps to antioxidant effects and immune effects, and it helps get rid of cancer cells. Like it does all of these amazing things. So we've got a whole lot of melatonin at nighttime while we're resting that helps all of these different repair programs in the body. And then because our body knows that the sun is going to come up in the morning, we get a little bump of cortisol, melatonin goes down. So as cortisol starts to awaken us, there's a whole lot of other things in our system that also start to awaken and arrive. And that means that like our blood sugar adaptation improves, our cognitive function, our ability to connect with others. Like these are all related to hormone functioning and neurotransmitter functioning, and even like the foods that we eat, like we get microbiome changes and detoxification enzyme changes that all happen at different points over the day where our body knows that at this pretty much regular set time, because of the way the sun is moving across the planet, this is what's going to happen in the body. Now, let's have a think about what happened about 120 years ago. I mean, lots of things were happening 120 years ago, but the introduction of electrical networks and artificial lighting. So initially it was the incandescent globe, which actually, honestly, I don't have too much of a problem with because it actually has a lot of infrared. I haven't spoken about the light spectrums yet. I'll park that for a little bit later. But really what I want to land here is that humans, all of a sudden, over the last 100 years or so, were in charge of their own light exposure. Yeah. And it's really changed what we've been able to do. It's changed productivity. It's changed the way that people interact with the world and with each other. Yeah. And it's also changed what light enters our system at different times. Now, you progress over the last 120 years, and what you will notice is that there's a really big difference in globes. We no longer have incandescent globes. And funnily enough, a lot of governments around the world have banned incandescent globes, which I do not agree with at all, but I'll park that. That's some conversation for another day, another time. But what we have had is the introduction of halogen and fluoro and LED lights. Now, I don't know how much you know about lights, but it doesn't matter even if it looks like a warm light or a cool light or a cold light or a white light. all artificial man-made lights, unless very specifically oriented, and they say specifically like they're circadian biology adapted or full spectrum lighting, then all other human-made lights, you can basically say 99% of them at this stage, are really focused in the blue light spectrum. Now, I am going to speak about wavelengths here because the blue light spectrum is a wavelength of light that over the course of the day, from dawn till dusk, that blue light spectrum changes. So in the morning, there is a little bit. At solar noon, there's a lot. At dusk, there's a little bit. And so our body is very responsive to how much blue light is in the environment. We've got special receptors in our eyes and special receptors all the way through our skin and elsewhere in our body that are specifically attuned to the wavelength of blue light, because that time at solar noon also helps our body understand when dusk is going to be and when sleep is going to happen. And then that is part of how it sets up our rhythms of what's going on over the course of the day. So the color of blue light, the intensity of brightness that we'd be outside in solar noon, even on a cloudy day, all of these things, our body is like understanding light. Every parcel packet of light is some information and energy exchange with our body. And so when our body and our eyes and our skin are under the input of blue light exposure, like right now I've got blue blocking glasses on, but I've got a whole big laptop screen in front of me now, yeah, that's emitting a blue light. I actually have filters on mine, but say it's emitting a blue light spectrum specifically at me. And so my body, even though right now as I'm recording this, it is nearly 5 p.m. In Melbourne at the start of spring. And so my body is getting a cue literally right now to say that it's midday, not that it's 5 p.m., but it's midday. And so that's going to create a little bit of it's desynchronizing my system. Yeah. Like other parts of my body were like, whoa, I thought it was 5 o'clock. I actually was just running outside barefoot on the earth with my dogs, which is a great way to set up the internal rhythm and harmony of your system. But then I've come back inside and I've got all this blue light exposure, which is telling my clock system, my inner biorhythm system, that it's a completely different time. So have a think about how chaotic that is when, from moment to moment, our system is getting a system like, we're waking up in the morning at 7 o'clock and it's 7 a.m., but we're looking at our phone first thing. And so our system is like, oh my gosh, it's midday. What was I thinking? I need to start doing some different things. And those different things aren't actually optimized to our health at all. And so over the course of the day, each and every interaction that we have with an artificial light source is another dysregulating factor that is impacting our body. And there are a whole lot of different mitigation strategies. This is exactly what I work on with my clients, and I've got lectures on, and you can do a whole lot of more learning around it. But it's really important that you understand that every light cue is either creating harmony or disharmony in your system. So if you're seeking to create more harmony, it doesn't matter whether that's on an emotional level, a mental level, a physical level, a spiritual level. If you're looking to create coherence and communication and collaboration within your mind-body system, then knowing that light is making the biggest, most fundamental difference to us. There are certainly a whole lot of other cues in our system that are very, very, very important, and I certainly love to address them. But if your light signaling is incorrect, nothing else that you attempt is going to land as well. It doesn't matter whether that's dietary changes or supplement additions or movement changes or insert the thing. And you can't biohack your way out of natural light exposure. This is just another really interesting thing to land, because over the course of the day, from dawn till dusk, the wavelengths of light that we're seeing are in the visible light spectrum, but also invisible light spectrum. And there is like millions of different types of wavelengths at specific frequencies and intensities that we're interacting with that cannot be replicated in science and that cannot actually really be understood by science. But what is understood is that chronic blue light exposure, artificial device exposure, man-made EMF exposure is interacting with our health in ways that do not support our health. So if you could even just start one strategy today, what would that strategy be? My best advice is to spend as much time outside as you possibly can, but particularly in the morning when you access morning light. That will actually help set up the whole biorhythm structure of your day. And the more that you do that and the more bare eyes and bare skin that you have showing, the easier that will be for your body to receive that information, calibrate to that information, and then shift itself accordingly. If you were to make another decision, it would be to eat at regular time intervals. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. To eat your dinner just before or at sunset, not after. That's really important. And to have at least a 3-hour gap between meals. Our body loves that kind of rhythmic regularity, and it's a really helpful way to set up the biorhythms, the cues of our system. It's another beautiful way to create more harmony. At nighttime, if you can mitigate artificial light exposure, and that means for me, like my biggest suggestions are, say from dawn till dusk, the sun is moving through this whole different spectrum and it's at different angles, yeah? And so if you're inside at nighttime after the earthly sun has gone down to bed and you're walking around inside with artificial overhead lights above your head, that is a signal for your system to say again that it's solar noon, yeah? Because you've got light coming down from above. So even if at nighttime you could just have low-lying lamps on, that would be better. If you could have candles, even better. And of course, if you can mitigate all artificial light exposure by wearing blue blocking glasses at nighttime. I mean, I don't really agree with the clear lens blue blocking glasses. They need to be yellow, orange, or red. The orange or red make it a little bit more challenging to see really well. That's why I'm wearing yellow ones, so that I've got some visual acuity. The more that blue is taken out, the less easy it is to land in on details. And so I wear my red blue blocking glasses at night if I was to be on a screen, if I was watching TV, for instance. Sure, it changes the color of the show. It also makes it less addictive. It also makes it much less activating for my system. And it also means that I'm not suppressing my melatonin. So I can turn off that TV at nighttime and hop into bed, and I've still got this nice rise in melatonin that allows all the repair programs that are meant to occur at nighttime to occur. Melatonin helps decrease cancer risk. Melatonin helps to improve what's happening with our DNA repair programs. Melatonin is an antioxidant. Melatonin is supporting our immune system function. Melatonin is doing all of these amazing things. And while we're resting at night, if we have enough melatonin and we can sleep well, we consolidate our memories. We learn better the next day. Our lymphatic system works better. Our detox potential is better. Like, all of these things start improving just because we've done our best to match the natural rhythms of the sun with our rhythms of modern life. And yeah, you can still live in a modern life and do your best to match those rhythms, and it will make a huge difference to your health. And really, you can start doing it today. The last thing that I want to mention before I sign off for this little informational session that's related to your health and well-being is that it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that when we're inside and there's lots of big windows that we're underneath natural light. The way that modern technology works with windows now is to block the majority of the UV component and nearly all of the infrared component. Now, when it comes to natural light wavelengths, no matter where the sun is, from dawn till dusk at any part of the day, about 50% of the entire spectrum of light from dawn till dusk is red and infrared light. Now, that's about half of what we would normally be exposed to if we were underneath natural light. And so that red and infrared is doing a whole lot of really helpful anti-inflammatory, communication boosting things to our whole mind body system, from brains to bones to blood, skin, to all of it. And so when we're inside a house and with windows closed, we don't have access to any of that infrared. What we do have access to is all of that visible light. So if you do have artificial lights on as well inside, or say if you had a bit of device exposure, you're still adding to your blue light exposure over the course of the day. Does that make sense? It's still a blue light enriched environment because we don't have any of that infrared and we don't have any of that red. I haven't really spoken about UV, and a lot of people have heard that UV is dangerous. UV light gives you cancer. Stay out of UV. I've done other lives on my Instagram page discussing some of these aspects. Pretty much every single one of the studies related to UV light exposure has been either UVA or UVB light in isolation. So not looking at the entire solar spectrum of light. And then from that determination of that study, they've said that, yes, it creates DNA damage. And yes, it creates oxidative stress. Yes, I mean, UV is very high energy intense light. It's very close to blue light energy on the wavelength spectrum. And so we need UV light as a human body as part of the entire solar spectrum because we've evolved to adapt with it since the dawn of humankind. And even before we were humans, we were other beings, yeah, on our way to evolution of humans. And so we need UV light to set up, again, a whole lot of signaling in our system. UVB, we need for vitamin D. And you cannot take vitamin D as a supplement that's the same as the vitamin D that we produce in the skin. We've got over 17 different types over the course of our lifespan of vitamin D. If you take vitamin D as a supplement, you're getting one type, and it's not the same as the 17 or the 16 other types that we have because of UVB exposure. There is no comparison. And that's why all of the studies that have shown that vitamin D deficiencies links you to increased mortality risk, death risk, and morbidity, disease risk. If you supplement those same populations of people, you're not really getting overwhelmingly good results. And that's because vitamin D as a supplement is not the same as UVB as part of the solar spectrum of light exposure for our human body that has been designed to live with natural light. And so UVA also does a heap of other things. And they've also done studies to show that UV exposure can help decrease viral infections and viral loads and boost our immunity and increases nitric oxide production, which is really good for reducing blood pressure and improves cardiovascular outcomes. But UVA also is really important for the signaling of our neurotransmitters and hormones, particularly in the morning. There is something called UVA rise in the morning. As the sun is coming up, a little bit more UVA starts to come out, and then UVB comes at a certain time. If you want to check what times they are in your location, you can get the Circadian app and or the D-Minder app to support you in those processes, and they're very, very helpful apps to have a look at. So here's just a few little drop-ins. I mean, I love talking about light. I certainly love talking about it when it's related to health, and hopefully this has given you some inkling, some understanding that if you have incorrect light cues, you'll have incorrect health. Mind, body, that's it, hands down. If you have too much artificial light exposure, particularly at night, you might not be sick now, but you'll certainly get sick as that continues, as that story continues to unfold. Our human body has not evolved at this stage at all in any adaptation towards artificial light exposure, and specifically not to the amount of blue light exposure that we're receiving. And just take a minute to just think about how much blue light exposure there is from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And I'm talking like even car lights inside the car headlights that are facing you when you're driving in traffic, the overhead lights on the roads, shopping centers, stadiums, gyms, anywhere you go, there is lights. Inside our own house, there is a huge amount of lights. And so your body is really overloaded with how much light information has been coming at it. So if you can do any small steps to ensure that it's not overloaded with artificial light, but loaded up a little bit more specifically with natural light, then you'll be loading up your health barometer. I look forward to hearing from you, and I certainly am looking forward to sharing a little bit more. If you are interested in doing classes with me, I've got them. And if you found any of this helpful or informative, please share it. It's really helpful for me. I'll sign off, and I'll just take off my blue blocking glasses for a moment just so that I can look into your eyes and say thank you so much for being here with me. I look forward to connecting another time.